Welcome to the Jaron Jarvis channel. I am Jaron Jarvis. Today, I would like to introduce to you, my new neighbor, part 1. As I write this, it's just gone midnight and it's been 3 days since our new neighbor moved in. I'm writing this to keep a record of the messed up stuff I've seen. I was home when he first moved in, hanging laundry in the back garden when I heard a soft, slightly hoarse voice coming across the fence. "Hello there, my name is Samuel Holt. I believe I'm your new neighbor," the voice said. I turned around to be greeted by a bright smile from what seemed like a kind face. "Sorry, hello, my name's Anna," I said nervously. "Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you," he said back and reached a hand across the fence. I walked over and shook his hand. It was thinning and looked frail, the bones almost visible beneath his skin. I took hold gently, but his grip was much firmer than I expected. "Do you live here alone?" he asked. No, I share it with a couple of friends," I replied. "Well then, I hope they're as pleasant as you are," he said with a grin. I smiled. "I should," I said, and nodded back towards the clothesline. He nodded back and smiled before walking back towards the house. "Be seeing you, I guess," he said, and he disappeared inside. That night I was coming back from the cinema, and as I passed I noticed a light that seemed to be flickering in Mr. Holt's living room. I tried to catch a quick glimpse of what was happening, but I ended up stopping and staring in. There he was, standing naked facing the window. His eyes were closed and he seemed to be talking to himself. A series of candles lit his thin frame and I noticed some marking on his chest and arms. I couldn't move. I just watched as he waved his hands, gesturing wildly for several minutes before the candles went out, all at the same time, and the room was plunged into darkness. I tried to adjust my eyes to see if Mr. Holy was still standing there, and then I saw something. In the darkness 2 yellow lights seemed to glow. It took me a few moments to realize that they were eyes, Mr. Holt's. They darted wildly from left to right, and after several moments they fixed on me. I felt my skin crawl as they did, and I ran inside my house. My 2 housemates Ruth and Lucy were sitting in the living room and they jumped as I slammed the door. I stared at it, almost expecting to see the yellow eyes glowing in the dark wood of the door. "What the hell?" Ruth said as she stepped into the hall. I tried to speak but I couldn't find the words. "What happened? You're crying?" Ruth asked, and she placed a hand on my shoulder making me jump. It was, "Come here," I said, and grabbed her hand. I opened the door and ran outside, stopping in front of Mr. Holt's window. It was completely dark, there were no glowing eyes, no candlelight, no Mr. Holt. He was, I don't know, he was just. I tried again but I couldn't explain, and that's why you shouldn't go to horror films, Ruth said, joking, patting the top of my head. I tried to think about it. Maybe I had just imagined it, maybe the movie affected me. I smiled and laughed cautiously before dismissing it and walking back to the house. As we walked up the short drive I glanced up and saw Mr. Holt standing, staring out of a window. He smiled the same charming smile he had earlier that day and stepped back. As he did, it seemed like something dark wrapped around his waist as he disappeared. The next day I left for work in the afternoon and I glanced into Mr. Holt's living room as I passed. It seemed normal, there was no evidence of the candles I had seen the night before, just a plain old living room. Was I the movie? I mean, it wasn't very good, but maybe it had some effect on me. As I continued on I started to feel like something was behind me, watching and following me, but when I returned there was nothing there. That's when I first heard the whispers. Someone said my name. It was a voice I didn't recognize and it was very quiet, not much more than a whisper, but I definitely heard it. I turned again but the path was completely empty. I tried to shake it off and carried on to work. For the rest of the day, sitting staring at a computer screen, my mind raced. I tried to make sense of what I had seen the night before, although now I wasn't entirely sure that I had actually seen it. And then this afternoon, the voice seemed so real, and the whole way to work I still felt like I was being followed. That evening when I finished and was making my way home, it started raining heavily, so I started running. I got to the house and realized that I had forgotten my keys. I knocked on the door but there was no answer. I made my way around to the back door but it was locked as well. I cursed loudly and then jumped as I heard a voice behind me. Something wrong? Samuel asked. I turned and smiled. I'm locked out, my friends seem to be out. I answered, well, that won't do, come on, you can wait in here. He said, gesturing inside his door. His house was warm and since my clothes were soaked I was happy to be out of the rain. The house had a strong smell of something sweet. It's not much at the moment. He said, it's better than ours. Try living in a house with 3 girls. I said jokingly, maybe if I was younger. He replied with a wink. It was strange, when I was in his company I couldn't help but feel calm and happy. What's that? I asked as I noticed a painting hanging in the hallway. I walked towards it almost unconsciously, something about it drew me in. It was a landscape but the whole thing seemed dead and dark. The ground was a dull yellow and the sky was almost pitch black. In the distance a small shape could be seen. I leaned closer and noticed that it was a city. It's called the Unknown Land. The artist is said to have painted one night after he awoke from a nightmare. 3 weeks later he took his life, said that he wished for it to be destroyed but it had already been sold, to me. Samuel said. He was standing behind me. Now it looks so lonely. I said. It is said to be a painting of a long dead god. Can you see it, there in the clouds? Samuel said, and he reached his hand over my shoulder and pointed to a strange shape in the dark clouds. I see it. I said. I felt like I was in a trance, my body relaxed and my eyes fixed on the strange amorphous shape. I stared for what felt like forever until, I swear, the shape moved. It seemed to shift and ripple almost like it was turning to face me. I stepped back and bumped into Samuel. I turned and he was smiling at me. It was the same reassuring smile from before but now there seemed to be something sinister hidden beneath it. I was about to speak when my phone rang. It was Ruth. Hey, what's up? She asked as I answered. Hey, I forgot my keys, I'm kinda locked out. I said. Oh, well, I'm just out of the shower, I can let you in. Ruth replied. Great, give me a second, I'm next door, with Mr. Holt. I said and hung up. So you have a way in? Samuel said cheerfully. Yeah, turns out my friend was just having a shower. I said. Well then, I hope you have a pleasant night, Anna. Samuel said and placed a hand on my shoulder. I smiled but it faded quickly as I noticed a bulge appear on his head. It looked like something was pushing its way out of him. He winced as the bulge receded. Thank you, I said hesitantly and quickly walked from the house. Ruth was standing at the door waiting and after I got inside I almost dropped. I could feel tears on my cheek. I didn't tell Ruth what had happened. I mean even I didn't believe it. I went to bed. The small round window looked out towards Samuel's house. I looked out as I entered the room and I saw him staring across. His head was twitching slightly. I ran over and pulled down the blind. That was 2 hours ago. I can still feel him looking, watching. I'm afraid to look and I can hear someone whispering my voice again.